Well, welcome everybody to the Road Ahead, OEMs and Fleets Cutting Carbon with Biodiesel. Thanks for joining us for our last educational session of the day, and look forward to seeing you all bright and early tomorrow morning as well for sessions. So thank you all for being here, and again, as in past sessions, be sure to check in at connect.biodieselconference.org again. Opportunities for gift cards still out there, and so be sure to check in there on the app and check that out. This afternoon's sessions, our moderator who will introduce the panel is Ron Flowers of the Greater Washington Region Clean Cities. He's also our 2017 Influence Award winner from this morning. So turn it over to you, Ron.
Good evening, afternoon. Well, as was said, I'm Influencer Award winner for this year, so I probably don't need to introduce myself. But I am Ron Flowers. I have served for some 25, 30 years in fleet operation in the District of Columbia. I've served as a Clean Cities coordinator for the last 6 years and been involved with Clean Cities program since its inception in 1993, and started my work and my effort in alternative fuels program in 1989, to believe it or not. So you might say, how old is this guy up here? But been around a few decades. But we're extremely pleased to have you here this afternoon, and I'm certain that there is a wealth of information that you will be taking away from this session. And we'll start with Jennifer Weaver. Jennifer has worked as a consultant with the National Biodiesel Board for over 15 years. And she's worked with market development and has served as the liaison between the biodiesel industry and all of the major automotive manufacturers, the equipment suppliers, the dealers, customers. So you can imagine she has a wealth of information and has probably been through a number of trials and tribulations dealing with that group over the years. So she has worked in consultant activities in this arena and worked with alternative fuels for over some 24 years. Let's give Jennifer a welcome.
Thank you, Ron, and thank you all for joining us here toward the end of the day. We promised to bring you some great information that's worth keeping the eyelids open for. So grab some caffeine and buckle up, because this is going to be fun. I'd like to kind of kick things off and just lay the groundwork and kind of pave the road ahead here for the rest of my distinguished speakers on the panel that we're very excited to have joining us here today. So the first thing I wanted to kind of do is review the success that we experienced in 2016 and why we're very optimistic about 2017. So we're coming off of a very successful 2016. We set a new record for biodiesel production and use in the United States with over 2.7 billion gallons of biomass-based diesel used in U.S. last year. That was thanks in part to some strong federal policy that we have in place with the Renewable Fuel Standard. We do have those volumes in place for 2017 and partially for 2018, so that helps to bring some market stability and kind of a roadmap, if you will, for our industry and the goals that we're meeting and in most cases exceeding. We also, as you've heard a little bit about earlier today, and we'll be hearing more about in this session, have a growing number of diesel vehicle options for using our fuel in them in 2017 and 2018. We're thrilled and excited about that. Despite the challenges that you've probably heard in the headlines with some of the manufacturers, we've got a robust group of others, the vast majority of them, who are still confidently moving in the direction of their dreams and our dreams to have a lot of great vehicles to use biodiesel in. In addition to that, fleet support for biodiesel continues to grow, and you're going to hear the voice of some fleets here today as well and the experience that they've had. And all of this provides opportunities for everybody in this room, bringing opportunities for marketers, blenders, users, as well as OEMs and fleets. This is just a quick snapshot of how the biodiesel industry has grown over the years. You can see we like those upward trend graphs, and we've seen a lot of that over the last several years. As I mentioned, the volume totals of biomass-based diesel, which includes the biodiesel and renewable diesel markets, last year topped 2.7 billion gallons. So we are advancing confidently, and we're not done yet. This is kind of the goal for the biodiesel industry. We're advancing toward a 4 billion gallon market goal by 2022, which is also kind of in line with the timeline of the current renewable fuel standard as it stands. This goal, we feel, is very achievable based on feedstock supplies, industry capacity, plant capacity, all the trends and indicators that have a bearing on how fast and how far the biodiesel market can grow. We feel this is very achievable and still an aggressive goal. I should say, too, that at that 4 billion gallon market, that is roughly 10% of the on-road diesel market. So we're not messing around. We're making a pretty good dent in the petroleum use in the United States, and we feel we can go further than that. So I mentioned earlier the renewable fuel standard. Biodiesel does qualify under two different categories under the renewable fuel standard, both as biomass-based diesel as well as advanced biofuel. We'll talk a little bit more in the next slide about what advanced biofuel means for biodiesel, but you can see that the volumes have been slowly but steadily growing. The renewable fuel standard remains one of the most important policies at the federal level for our industry, and our DC team and many of our members work very hard with members of Congress and Capitol Hill and the White House to ensure that this market stability remains intact. So for 2017, the volume requirement for biomass-based diesel is at 2 billion gallons. Advanced non-differentiated, where biodiesel also plays, is making up the vast majority of that category, is at 4 billion gallons. 2018, you can see increases just slightly, 2.1, and still waiting on an advanced total for 2018. So advanced biofuel means a lot for biodiesel. That was an EPA designation that does define biodiesel as being a renewable fuel other than ethanol derived from cornstarch that has life cycle greenhouse gas emissions reductions at least 50% less than baseline fuel, which is baseline diesel fuel. Biodiesel really is achieving more in the 56 to 86% emissions reduction. So obviously it's doing a lot to clean up our air and the emissions, and that's why it's being given stronger consideration. In addition to federal policy, we do have a number of state policies that are also helping to drive volume and drive use of biodiesel, both at the state and local level, and that is responsible for roughly about 1 billion gallons of the fuel that's used. So trailblazer states like Minnesota, Illinois, Iowa, California's low carbon fuel standard, all driving biodiesel use in those regions, as well as the federal policy that kind of drives it nationwide. We are finding that those state policies have started inducing blends in many states into those higher blend ranges, the B11 to B20 kind of ranges. And state policies are even starting to indicate a demand for blends above B20, and California is a good long-term market for that as well. So that's why we work very closely with our OEM partners and with fleets to be prepared for that. And so, okay, we're going to advance together in this direction. How can we work together to be prepared for that, both as the industry that's supplying the fuel as well as the industry that's building the vehicles and equipment that use the fuel? So we're going to look just real quickly at some of the benefits that biodiesel brings to the table and why so many customers are using it and succeeding with it here. It does good things. Biodiesel, as you've heard, we're big biodiesel fans, so that's not a surprise coming from our mouths, but it is providing a very high quality fuel from domestic sustainable resources. It's helping us to reduce our imports of foreign oil. It's supporting thousands upon thousands of jobs in the United States, which no matter what President is in the Oval Office. Jobs are an important part of our American fabric, and so biodiesel is bringing a lot of those to the industry. We're also generating wages, about $2.6 billion in wages over the last couple of years, $17 billion worth of total economic activity. And on the environmental side, obviously doing a lot of good things in terms of reducing particulates, carbon monoxide, underburned hydrocarbons, especially in the older diesel models that were prior to the addition of the after-treatment systems, the SCR systems, et cetera. Biodiesel can help those fleets with older diesel models really clean up their act as well. And it does offer the best carbon footprint of any U.S.-produced fuel, and we'll look at that a little more closely here. So biodiesel, U.S. biodiesel on average reduces carbon emissions on a life cycle basis by 80%, and that's pretty huge. So when you look at how biodiesel is kind of follows through the cycle from field to wheels, the plants that are being grown that end up becoming biodiesel feedstocks are absorbing carbon from the air. And when you contemplate that entire process of growing and harvesting those plants, those crops, transporting them, turning them into fuel, using them, burning them in an engine, you still get an energy balance of 5.5 to 1. So for every 1 unit of energy it takes to make the fuel, you get 5.5 units of energy out. So it's a very good proposition from a carbon standpoint. Sustainability benefits are also remarkable for biodiesel. You know, there's always been headlines about food versus fuel, and that is not the case with biodiesel. In biodiesel's world, you get food and fuel. So about 50% of the biodiesel that's made and used in the United States is made from soybean oil. Soybeans are grown primarily for their protein meal. So about 80% of every soybean is protein. We crush those beans, we use that protein to feed humans and animals. About 20% is then the oil, and we can use that oil that was previously just a drag on the market to make a very high quality biodiesel fuel. So the more beans we're growing, the more humans and animals we're feeding, the more oil is left over. We got to do something with it. We can make a very high quality fuel with it. Same thing goes with the other feedstocks that we are using to make biodiesel. I should mention that too. So animal fats, byproducts of the meat processing industry, we're not growing more cows to have more biodiesel. It's just there's that byproduct that's left over after those meat sources are processed, and we can again use those products for biodiesel. So again, very sustainable proposition. Most important for some of our panelists here is how does it work in an engine? Biodiesel does actually improve several diesel properties that make it very advantageous as an automotive fuel. It does blend with petrodiesel in any percentage. Again, you've heard a lot of talk about B5, B20, B11. Those are probably the most common blends in the United States. But once it is blended, it does not separate back out, and it can be used in increasing blends as well. Biodiesel is also very preferable because it offers a high cetane rating, higher than U.S. diesel fuel, usually around the 50 average versus diesel fuel around 44. So it gives you a smoother, more complete burn. It offers higher lubricity, which is especially important to keep those engines running for long life. Virtually zero sulfur, and also very, very low aromatics and toxicity. And smoke is much cleaner. So for fuel or fleet operations, you know, running vehicles inside, much cleaner environment for those technicians. Biodiesel standards have been something that have been a hallmark of the biodiesel industry. We take them very, very seriously. We've had ASTM specifications in place since 2001, and that really was the opening door, if you will, for partnering with our OEM partners. They need to know what this fuel is going to look like when it enters their engine. We need to provide them assurance that it is a fit-for-purpose fuel no matter what feedstock we make it from. At the end of that production process, it needs to meet that same ASTM spec. So 6751 is the pure B100 spec. D975 is actually the diesel fuel specification, but biodiesel up to B5 qualifies under that diesel fuel spec. And 7467 is the blended spec for B6 to B20. So that does indeed provide assurance to the automakers of what the fuel is going to look like and how it's going to perform in their engines. BQ 9000 is another quality assurance that automakers and fleets have. BQ 9000 is kind of the industry quality control program similar to an ISO 9000 type program. So it pairs the ASTM specifications with fuel management practices, and it's applied at 4 different levels. So for producers, marketers, laboratories, and retailers, all assuring the quality control measures from one end of the production scheme to the actual use of it. Most OEMs are now either requiring or strongly encouraging folks to source their fuel from BQ 9000 certified suppliers, and we strongly support that. We have right now about 91% of the biodiesel that's used and sold in the United States is supplied by a BQ 9000 certified supplier, and we will not rest till we are at 100%. So we strongly encourage our members to become certified under that program. Another great reason people are using more biodiesel is because it's easier to find. We've got over 2,000 retail stations and distributorships nationwide. It's pumped from retail pumps just like you buy gasoline or diesel fuel, and it's a very seamless operation. You don't have to be specially trained in order to fill up your vehicle with biodiesel. Also, I think it sometimes comes as a surprise to people to see how many retail stations are actually selling higher than B5 blends. This chart shows you all those little blue dots are retailers that are selling anywhere from B10 to B20. That doesn't even count all the B5, and B5 is kind of ubiquitous now with diesel fuel nationwide. So all of these retailers are already selling B10 to B20 blends, which is another strong reason why we work so closely with our OEMs to make sure that they're aware of that and designing their equipment to be B20 capable. So I'd like to kind of round out quickly by talking about some of the OEM and fleet support for biodiesel that has really helped this industry grow to where it is today, and some of the exciting things that are coming in the future. It really spans everything from the off-road market to passenger vehicles, trucks, SUVs, all the way up to medium and heavy-duty trucks. And so we are excited to see the evolution that we've had in that industry over the years, and we've got some great things coming, as you're going to hear more about. So just kind of as a summary, for a lot of the reasons that the OEM and fleet support is growing is for those very things that we've already talked about, the growing volumes and availability, favorable policies both on the state and federal level, the emissions benefits, the quality specifications and programs. It all helps feed this consumer and fleet desire to green their operations. And companies like General Motors and Ford and Fiat Chrysler and others who have really tapped into this psyche in the American public are reaping the benefits of that, because fleets and customers want to do good by driving their vehicles, and it's great that they have more options to do that now. We're very pleased to say that in the 15 or so years that I've been working in this OEM program with the National Biodiesel Board, we've seen our support grow from basically one OEM really, supporting biodiesel. John Deere, thank you very much. Chuck Studer's in the audience, and he was our trailblazer there. To now, pretty much every major manufacturer that's selling diesel equipment in the United States supports at least B5, and the vast majority of them, of vehicles coming off the line, are now approved for use with B20. In fact, in the GVW class 5 through 8 vehicles that account for about 92% of on-road diesel fuel use, nearly 90% of those medium and heavy-duty OEMs support B20. So you can rest assured that the vast majority of your equipment that you're working with is likely B20 approved. And if you ever have questions about that, please come and see me, and I'll give you my contact information at the end. I've got a pretty good pulse on where they all sit with that. So if you have specific questions, don't hesitate to contact me. We do keep a list on the National Biodiesel Board website of the current OEM position statements on biodiesel, as well as the U.S. diesel vehicle list. We're in auto show season. I hail from Detroit, along with a couple of my panel partners here. Detroit Auto Show is still going on. There's a lot of exciting announcements as new vehicle models are being unveiled. So we are compiling all that into the 2017 list, and it should be available on the MBB website in March. So keep an eye out for that. But you're going to hear a little bit of a sneak preview on some of those here yet today. So I just kind of want to wind up with a preview of all of our OEM partners and where they're at in supporting biodiesel. You can see some big names up there, all of the Detroit Big Three, a lot of the medium and heavy-duty truck manufacturers, off-road equipment manufacturers as well, along with some new announcements you may have heard if you were here last year. PACCAR now supports B20 in all of their legacy as well as new equipment. So that made a big dent, over $1 billion additional vehicles on the market, on the road, that are running B20 capable. Ford also has been a longtime supporter of B20. They approve it in all of their Model 2011 and beyond Ford Super Duties, Class 2 through 5 and 6 and 7, and their Ford Transit van. And you may have heard in the showcase today that they are also bringing out an F-150 diesel in 2018. Specs on that and biodiesel levels are going to be announced closer to the launch date, but a lot of people anxiously looking for that vehicle. Another new announcement, fairly recent here in the last few weeks, Mazda is bringing out their much-awaited CX-5, a little crossover vehicle there. Also, not formally announced their specs on biodiesel yet, but we'll be keeping an eye on that, including that in our diesel vehicle list. And with that, I'm going to close and pass the baton here to my team from General Motors Fleet that's got an awful lot of good stuff, and I'm not going to steal their thunder because they're bringing the thunder. So with that, I'll pass it off. Thank you.